Hello, I'm going to show you how we interpret a birth chart using a system of astrology known as vibrational astrology. Vibrational astrology uses different rules from the ones that are most common, and I'll use the chart of a famous person to demonstrate the ideas. We'll look at the birth chart of Marilyn Monroe. Her birth time accuracy is what we call an AA accuracy. It's from a birth certificate or a birth record, so it's an accurate time. Now, here's 4 steps that we use in interpreting a chart using vibrational astrology. Let me go over the first 2. What we do is we look at any obvious aspects, like trines and sextiles that are very, very strong with a 1-degree orb or less, and then we look at midpoint structures. Midpoint structures are considered to be unimportant by most astrologers, but in vibrational astrology they're considered to be extremely important. So let's do these first 2 steps. I'm in the Series 2.0 software. I'm looking at the chart of Marilyn Monroe. This wheel style is not the prettiest wheel style in the world, but it's very helpful for vibrational astrology. We have a big ring here. We can see the aspect lines very clearly. These dashed lines are minor aspects. We're not concerned with those right now. There are 2 aspects that are very strong. Mars trine Saturn under a 1-degree orb, and Venus semi-sextile Uranus. 15-minute orb, very, very small orb. So we just make a note of that because they may become involved later. So we just make some observations. She also has a Moon, Saturn, Neptune T-square. The orbs are a little more than a degree, so that's not as important. There are 3 planets, so we might make a note of that. So we just make any observations about any strong aspects. We don't draw any big conclusions yet. We're not going to focus on the zodiac signs and houses. We're going to look at these aspect patterns first to see what the person is all about. And then we go to the midpoints. So I go to midpoints. I'll select this option to view change settings first. And we want just conjunctions and oppositions with a 1.5-degree orb. And just Sun through Pluto. So you unselect these, set this orb to a 1.5 degrees, and see what you have. And you'll get these diagrams. And what the diagram means, these midpoint trees are called. I'll pull up a pop-up wheel so we can refer to her chart wheel. It just means that the planet at the top is in between the other 2. That the Sun is conjunct the midpoint of Uranus and Neptune. So there's the Sun, there's Uranus, there's Neptune, and the Sun is directly in between them. Not considered to be very important by most astrologers, but in vibrational astrology, it means there's a beat going on. When these distances are the same, there's a resonance. The Sun-Uranus angle is the same frequency, the same pitch, you might say, the same note as the Sun-Neptune. So or you can look at it as a beat. You're going bam, bam, bam. These distances are the same. However you want to look at it, it's very, very powerful. So the belief or the concept in vibrational astrology is that these planets being directly in between 2 others, they'll either be conjunct or opposition. For example, Neptune is opposite the Moon-Jupiter midpoint. Here's Neptune. Here's Moon and Jupiter. Well, you can see what's happening. This is a conjunction with the 7 or 8-degree orb, and Neptune is pretty much in the middle of them. So, and it's opposite the midpoint of the Moon-Jupiter with 44-minute orb. So it's a conjunction or an opposition. Let me show you another example of an opposition. Saturn opposite Uranus-Pluto. Here's Saturn, here's Pluto, here's Uranus, and Saturn is opposite the midpoint, and that means the Saturn-Pluto angle is the same as the Saturn-Uranus angle. Okay, so when you have these same distances, it creates a resonance, and it's very powerful. So what does it mean? How do we interpret it? What we can do is we can go to the Harmonic Highlights report. Go to Interpretation, Natal, Various Specialized, Harmonic, and select the Harmonic Highlights report. Click OK, and there's an introduction, and it interprets various harmonic aspects, and we'll scroll to the bottom. And there it is, the direct midpoint structures. So there's the Sun conjunct Uranus Neptune, and it tells us what it means. And the Venus conjunct Mercury. She has a lot of midpoint structures. Marilyn Monroe has a lot of direct midpoint structures in her chart. Most people have one or two or three. She happens to have a lot. Okay, now, so let's go over this again with this larger wheel that I've captured for teaching purposes. There's her chart wheel, a nice bigger wheel so you can see it more clearly. And I've copied and pasted the midpoint structures here for reference. So you got the idea? Here's her wheel, and it's telling us that Sun is directly in between Uranus and Neptune. Excuse me. Mercury's in between Venus and Pluto. And so on. And we can run the harmonic highlights report to get some ideas of what it means. So, for example, I've copied and pasted here a few of the interpretations. Excuse me. For example, here it says Venus conjunct Mercury Mars. You have excellent aptitude for understanding the arts, and I've copied it here. So just to summarize a few of the main points in these midpoint structures, without reading all of it, so that we don't take forever to do this tutorial video, let's read some of the interpretations. And tell me, I can't hear you, but do you think this describes Marilyn Monroe? What I'm claiming is that vibrational astrology, and part of vibrational astrology is direct midpoint structures, will go right to the heart of who the person is. Okay, so is this Marilyn Monroe? This has no orb, so it should be 0 degrees, 0 minute orb. Should describe her very clearly. More than her sun sign, more than her moon sign. Does it? Let's see what it says. You have excellent aptitude for understanding the arts, making things that are beautiful. You succeed in areas that require an aesthetic sense as well as technical ability. You also have some talent for psychology. Doesn't sound good. Doesn't sound like Marilyn Monroe. But here's the amazing thing about astrology. When we read the biography of Marilyn Monroe, we're going to find that the astrology knows more than we do. We're going to find out that this is very much Marilyn Monroe, even though we think of her as glamour girl, beautiful, physically beautiful lady, very glamorous, very charismatic, and that's all there is to Marilyn Monroe. This is actually more important, more powerful, when you actually read the biography and find out who she is. So when I read this, I thought, doesn't sound like Marilyn Monroe. Then I read the biography, we find out this is what she's really all about. Now here's another one. Mercury conjunct Mars Neptune, 0 degrees 18 minutes. At an early age, it is possible that you developed a fear of some technical and scientific areas, which would be unfortunate because actually you can be competent in these areas. You are very good at picking up on fine nuances of meaning in literature, poetry, and art. So Mercury at Mars Neptune is like achieving subtle things. Mercury's understanding them. Things like poetry, art, literature should be strong. You have a very imaginative and creative mind, but you can become confused if overloaded with too much information at one time. We get the feeling she would be a writer. Well, actually, what we find out about her, first of all, who did she marry? She had 2 marriages. One was to a playwright. Is that just a coincidence? What's going on there? We find out she's reading people like James Joyce. She's got a ton of books. She's very, very interested in understanding. She struggles to understand this literature. She, went from one adoption home to another. She didn't have a stable upbringing. When she becomes an adult, she's so curious and so motivated to try to understand poetry and literature, and she's reading it very much. This isn't just, some goody-goody, nice sound bite to say about a famous person that, she liked to read. She really did like poetry and literature. It was very much at the heart of what's going on. It doesn't matter what we think a person is, what image we have of a person. We need to find out who they really are. The surprise is that who we think Marilyn Monroe is and who she really is are quite different. And I'll show you some of the biographical information. The astrology, again, knows more than I do, because I didn't know this about her, but the astrology points it out. Now, let me go back a second. Notice that both of these midpoint structures have Mercury and Mars. Venus is in between Mercury and Mars. Mercury is at Mars Neptune. This means there's some kind of pattern going on with these planets. So if you start noticing midpoint structures where two of the planets are the same, doesn't matter where they appear in among the three planets, could be the one at the middle or the ones on the side. But here's Mercury, Mars, here's Mercury, Mars. I'm going to show you in a minute a pattern in her chart of how Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Neptune are all connected together in a pattern. So, what I mentioned here is that these midpoints seem to not describe the clearest and strongest things about Marilyn Monroe very well. And we do not want to stretch the meanings too far. We don't want to say, oh, well, Neptune is glamour, and it's Hollywood, it's illusion, it's imagination, therefore it does describe her. I don't do that. What I do is I stick to what the interpretations should mean. And this really means that she should be literary, because that's the interpretations that we have based on years of study, and it should work. Now she has these other midpoints. Mercury, Venus, Pluto, enjoys art, music, literature again. That is deep and moving because of Pluto. It's deep and not superficial. You have a lot of creative talent. It can be expressed through many different media. You have the ability to make things that are both functional and beautiful. Pluto conjunct Mercury, Neptune. Well, this orb is a little bit bigger. Again, emphasizes literature. We're finding Mercury and Mars were in the previous midpoints. Mercury and Pluto are in both of these. Pluto is at Mercury, Neptune. Mercury is at Venus, Pluto. See that? Mercury, Pluto, Mercury, Pluto, Mercury, Pluto. So we're seeing Mercury, Mars repeated, Mercury, Pluto repeated. What's going on here? So now we just look at the planets in the natal chart to see what's going on. There's some kind of Mercury, Mars, and Mercury, Pluto combining together in midpoints. And here it is. She has an extraordinary, unusual pattern. We call it a 5-planet string. Mars, the distance from Mars to Venus is about 38 degrees. Another 38 degrees to go from Venus to Mercury. Another 37 degrees, so 37 to 38 degrees to get to Pluto. And then another, about 39 degrees. So between 37 and 39 degrees from Mars to Venus, Venus to Mercury, Mercury to Pluto, Pluto to Neptune, they're all about equally spaced. 5 planets equally spaced. And this, it should be Marilyn Monroe based on vibrational astrology, because it's all vibrating at the same frequency. We've got Venus at Mercury, Mars. Whenever you get Mercury and Venus together, it means beautiful thoughts. You get literature, art, making art, creating art or literature. Mercury at Venus, Pluto means again, literature. This beautiful thought is deep. The Pluto at Mercury, Neptune, it's highly imaginative and inspired. To me, it sounds like a poet. It sounds like a writer of literature and poetry. We expect a fiction writer, a playwright, a stage designer, an artist with very interesting ideas. That is Marilyn Monroe. And you say, oh, no, David, your interpretation's wrong. That's not Marilyn Monroe. She's glamorous and beautiful and fairly superficial, playing these simple movies. She's a sex symbol. She's not a writer and a poet. Your interpretation is wrong. But what we're going to find out when we read her biography is it's true. Also, Sun conjunct Uranus, Neptune, high imagination and idealism, etc. And Neptune opposite Moon, Jupiter. Experience different cultures and ethnic styles. It is good for you to travel and have many different kinds of friends. This is because Jupiter and Neptune are highly expansive. Moon is the soul. When you get Moon, Jupiter, and Neptune, it's like a large soul, very unprejudiced, very open. You can be successful in the entertainment industry or in any field that requires a lot of imagination and vision. Well, that's true. You're a bit of a dreamer and a philosopher. Now, what's nice about this, in terms of testing it, is this is right out of the software. I'm not making this up just to fit her. All right, now, the next thing we do is we can run the harmonic patterns listings, number 1, to see what's what vibration these midpoint structures are in. Let me show you, and it'll make more sense. Let me close this window. Let's go back to our wheel, we don't really have to go back to a wheel, but just to clear that stuff so it's not confusing you. So I'm back to Marilyn Monroe, I'm looking at her wheel, and I'm going to go to listings, harmonic patterns listings, right here, number 1. Is that what I said I wanted us to do? Number 1, to see, actually this is harmonic patterns listing number 8. Sorry about that, I've got a typo here. Let's go to number 8. Okay, number 8. And it takes a few seconds to calculate. And now we're going to start to see the details of who Marilyn Monroe is. And we'll see things like this. That Sun at Uranus Neptune is actually a 5th harmonic pattern. So I've copied and pasted it here. Same information that I've got here. I've copied and pasted it here so that we can see it more clearly, and I've color-coded it. So what this is telling us is that the Sun conjunct Uranus Neptune is a 5th pattern. It's a 5 pattern. And it's also within orb of 10, 15, 20. This just means Sun at Uranus Neptune are 5ths. Let me show that to you. Let's go back to the program. Let me close this. And let's do this. Let's right-click, go to Customize, go to Aspects, and I will select quintiles, and there it is, Sun in between Uranus and Neptune. It's 72 degrees from Uranus to Sun, 72 degrees from Sun to Neptune. That is very much Marilyn Monroe. What does that mean? Uranus-Neptune is magic of the moment. It's inspiration. 5 is play, creativity. This is fantasy. This is Hollywood. This is Sun at Uranus-Neptune is the magic of Hollywood. The fantasy, the limelight, the magic, the excitement, the inspiration. Roll the cameras. You know, it's Sun at Uranus Neptune in 5th harmonic. Hollywood star. Very common. Some kind of highly inspirational, creative expression. And where does she get her charisma from? This is a big part of it. Sun at Uranus Neptune. She's a star. She's a celebrity. She seems unreal, like a fantasy, like a dream. She's not. She doesn't seem grounded. She's like. She seems like angelic or something. Sun at Uranus Neptune is a fantasy, magical attunement. So that gives some of the spark, some of the magic. It doesn't explain the beauty, that aspect of it, and why she's a sex symbol and all the emphasis on that, but it just emphasizes that magic. So when we look more closely at these midpoint structures, we start to see who the person is. Okay, so just cancel out of that. I just wanted to show you how this listing can help. Now, this gets very interesting. The Venus at Mercury-Mars is a 19. When it says 19 times 2, 19 times 3, it just means it's within orb of higher harmonics. It tells us it's a very tight pattern. And the Mercury at Mars-Neptune is also 19. So there's some big 19 thing going on. So what this is telling us, let me make this simpler, that when we look at, let's go back to these midpoints, it's telling us that this is some kind of 19th. This is like 1 19th, or maybe it's 2 19ths, or 3 19ths. It's some kind of 19th of a circle. Let's bring up a calculator. I'm going to bring up a calculator. Well, I can bring up the calculator right in Sirius. I'll go to calculator. And let's do 1. I'm going to type 1 divided by 19, and I'll multiply it times 360, and it's telling me that 1 19th of a circle is almost 19 degrees. So what is 2/19ths of a circle? 19 times 2, almost 38 degrees. And that's the distance. Remember I said this distance between these planets is 37 to 39 degrees. It's about 2/19ths. So it's 2/19ths of a circle from Mars to Venus, 2/19ths from Venus to Mercury, 2/19ths from Mercury to Pluto, and 2/19ths to Neptune, which means this is probably 4/19ths and 4/19ths. They're all in 19ths, and we can see this by selecting the 19th harmonic chart. What does 19 tell us? Well, when we get further into harmonic astrology, we will find out that what 19 tells us is, it tells us, let me go up here to my notes on 19th harmonic. The 19th harmonic gives, again, an emphasis on literature, on organizing ideas, on not necessarily literature, but creative understanding of things. It gives that synthesized Mercury-Venus kind of quality that she's got. So we can look at something called a harmonic chart, and the harmonic chart shows all those planets conjunct. Now this is a little bit advanced if you haven't watched the videos on harmonic charts, but you should watch those first, learn about harmonic charts, and we see that the Neptune, Mars, Venus, Mercury, all these planets that form midpoint structures are also 19. This makes it undeniable that her ability for literature is extremely strong. It trines Moon. It's a big, huge part of who she is that did not come out enough. It did not become clear and strong enough. And when we read the biographical information about her, we're going to see that this is exactly what happened. Exactly what happened. Okay, let me go back. To this. Okay, so what we find out is that we run this harmonic patterns listing number 8, it says 1 here, but it should be 8. We'll find out what beat a lot of these midpoints are, and what we find out is something very surprising. Marilyn Monroe, who we thought was all about glamour and beauty, we see the glamour. The Sun at Uranus, Neptune, and 5th harmonic, there it is. We see it. It's true. She is glamour girl. There it is. And she happens to be physically beautiful. We combine that with the astrology, and we get Marilyn Monroe. Fine. But we find out there's a whole other side to her, which in many ways is even bigger. It's bigger because it has a lot of planets. It has 5 planets, all tied together, indicating literature. Also, 19 is good for choreography or design. It's very good for plot, concept, like playwrights, authors, creating imaginative storylines. So, you know, they say Marilyn Monroe was very intelligent, had an IQ, high IQ or something, but she's specifically highly intelligent about literature, poetry, and things like that. Very much so. Not just, you know, good for a glamour girl. She's outstanding potential here. Remember that she's brought up in foster homes, didn't have the opportunities for education and so on that other people have. This is very, very strong, and should have been developed even more for her to fulfill all of her dreams. Now, another thing we do is we run, in the Sirius software, we go to listings, and we select harmonic patterns listings number 1. Okay, this harmonic triangles, we click OK, and then this tells us what harmonics are strongest in the chart. So we'll see here 19 emphasized. Here's 19 with the Neptune, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and it spreads only 7 degrees. So we can look through here, we'll see different patterns emphasized, and we can analyze and use this to analyze. We see a lot of 13 times 9 becomes very important. So we'll study harmonic charts that show up here as strong. 131 shows up a lot. Okay, so this tells us what patterns are strongest. And here's a summary of it. We notice that 19 is strong. We don't know the meaning of 131. and 241, but we do see the 13 times 9, and we know what 13 means, we know what 9 means, we know what 2 means, so we can get a pretty good idea of what this means astrologically, which I'll talk about at some point. I don't know if I actually go into it in this tutorial video or not, but I'm going to take this to a certain point of detail. We won't cover everything that we're seeing here in this one video. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to always analyze harmonics 8, 5, 7, and 9. Always. Those are fundamental. We're going to also look at 19 because it shows up a lot. And when we look at the 5th, we know that Sun, Uranus, and Neptune should show up. So we look at these harmonics. Here's her 8th harmonic. And here we see the sexual power. Venus, Uranus, Pluto. Grand trine in the 8th harmonic. 20 Scorpio, 21 Pisces, 17 Cancer. Exactly what we expect. Some emphasis on Venus, Uranus, Pluto. But here's a surprise. Saturn is opposite Venus, and this is a kite pattern, as it's called. Trine, sextile, sextile, trine, and the opposition, Saturn. Now that's surprising. Venus, Saturn means wanting commitment, wanting wanting stability. She actually wants to be married. So that's interesting. Also, when you have Saturn, Uranus involved, there's some disturbance, some discomfort. So there's a high excitability, high sexuality, but some discomfort, something's not working right, and she also wants commitment. So she's not a wild, free, single girl at heart. So the Venus, Uranus, Pluto, as we expect, but it's a spreading kite with Saturn. And Mercury's involved. Where's Mercury? Mercury's over here. It trines Saturn. So there's almost a mystic rectangle. The Mercury-Venus is out of orb, but Mercury trines Saturn. It's opposite Uranus. This indicates a problem solver. So this also gives a sense of rhythm, beat, dance, musical talent. Again, we have Saturn, Uranus, Pluto. Whenever you get Saturn, Uranus, Pluto, things are a little bit chaotic, rebellious, or even dysfunctional. But she does want commitment. She's a problem solver. This is all very surprising. There's some disturbance going on. She's supposed to be just a beautiful, sexy, glamour girl. What's this disturbance? What's this commitment going on? Something is exciting, but needs to be reformulated. So let's read some information about Marilyn Monroe. Actress Celeste Holm told me that Marilyn's sexual problems were rooted in her traumatic childhood, so she had sexual problems. That's typically the case when you have Venus, Saturn, Uranus. Born the child of Gladys Pearl Monroe Mortensen, who developed schizophrenia, so her mom was schizophrenic. Both of Gladys's parents, Otis Elmer Monroe and Della Monroe Granger, lived out their twilight years in mental institutions. Both of her parents, while Gladys's brother Marion was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. So we've got a brother who's mentally ill. We have parents that are mentally ill. This, according to Celeste Holm, gave Marilyn a lifelong terror of pregnancy. In addition to her fear of giving birth to an abnormal child, Marilyn suffered from devastating bouts of endometriosis, a gynecological condition causing intense pelvic pain, severe cramps, and painful periods. It made normal sexual intercourse difficult and uncomfortable. Because of this, Holm explained, Marilyn was never able to enjoy sex with men. So here's this glamour girl, sex symbol, who actually is having difficulty with sex due to physiological problems. We see the Venus, Saturn, Uranus, which often creates hormonal problems, sexual problems. She has it. Plus, what's not shown in the chart is a lot of the environmental conditions, that there is schizophrenia and mental illness running in the family like crazy. And Marilyn Monroe is not paranoid. She's intelligent. She's got a problem, mental problems running through the family. It's going to make her concerned about having a child. So she's got a lot of confusion and complex things going on. The Venus, Saturn, Uranus, Pluto pattern combined with the physical problems, and probably helped contribute to them, but it's also largely genetic as well, resulted in a lack of sexual pleasure. But with Venus, Uranus, Pluto, she certainly would have wished that she could. So we know she wanted that sexual pleasure with Venus, Uranus, Pluto. And she flaunted it. Some of this flaunting of sexual power is probably partly her need for it and her inability to get satisfaction due to the physiological problems that she has. So a whole deep level, let me go back to this, a whole deep level of Marilyn Monroe that I didn't know about. I just thought she was a glamour girl. Here she is having all of these problems indicated by the Venus, Saturn, Uranus. She does have the Venus, Uranus, Pluto. The story is being told in these harmonic charts. Now here's the fifth harmonic chart, and there's the Sun, Uranus, Neptune with the South Node. So the South Node gets involved in this as well. That's the magic, the glamour, the otherworldliness of her art and her theater, her charisma, her magical glamour. She uses it to advantage to be a sex symbol, even though she has sexual problems. The Moon, Mercury, Pluto, art that probes deep, and she reads James Joyce, so which is very, very deep and ponderous. Potential success with creative design and creative projects. Okay, so here's her seventh harmonic, not particularly strong. No strong patterns. If the midpoint patterns are also weak, we look at aspect patterns and midpoint patterns in the harmonics, and that just means the harmonic is not particularly important. Everyone has strong harmonics and weak harmonics. If you have a weak harmonic, doesn't mean that you're lacking that quality of the harmonic. It just means it's not important to you. You're not on that wave. She's not on the seventh harmonic wave, which is the wave of discipline, training, and introversion. It's just not something that's hugely important to her. She does have Sun and Jupiter, 2 sevens. She's not missing it. It's not like there's some huge lack, but it's not her main thing to be in training all the time. Now, this is amazing. In her ninth harmonic chart, Moon and Uranus are conjunct, and it tells us here they're 1/9. And it's extremely exact. When Moon and Uranus are 1/9, what we have is the rhythms of nature. It's like the biological cycles are ticking and are very strong. Let's read what I say here. Moon is 1/9 Uranus in the natal chart. In the ninth harmonic chart, they appear conjunct and square to Venus. Venus at late 18 Sag squaring this. So Venus coming and hitting the Moon, Uranus. The Venus, now this, by the way, is the Venus semi-sextile Uranus. Remember we looked at those aspects originally in the chart? The Venus semi-sextile Uranus appears as a square, and it says here 1/12. So this is the least common denominator business if you watch the videos on interpreting harmonic charts. So that Venus-Uranus semi-sextile, it gets involved here in this Moon-Venus-Uranus pattern. So when I saw this pattern, I looked at it and I said, oh my, she wanted children. This is the typical meaning of this, is you've got the biological rhythms. This is often people, if they don't have children, I've seen midwives with these things. The cycles of nature, the giving birth. Sometimes they study biological rhythms as well. And then Venus coming in, this is, you can look at it as like sexuality and rhythm for the purpose of having children. So she didn't want to just be a sex symbol for that. She has a strong sexual drive, but having children is a big part of it. We see this in the chart. And having parents who are mentally ill, a brother who's mentally ill, it's making her very nervous about having children. Plus, she's having difficulty enjoying sex in the first place. So she's got a lot of fear, a lot of worry, and she was in therapy to work through these things. Very difficult and stressful thing. And while all this is going on, everybody's looking at her Sun, Uranus, Neptune, and Glamour Girl. So there's a whole other storyline going on while all the guys are, drooling over this beautiful, sexy lady. There's a whole other story going on of wanting to have children. In the eighth harmonic, the inability to enjoy sex, the situation of having both parents and mentally ill, or brothers mentally ill, the fear of having children but wanting to have children, wanting to be married, her Venus Saturn in the eighth harmonic. We see everything going on in the harmonic charts. So the feeling here, when you get Moon, Venus, Uranus tied up in ninth harmonic, there's a strong sense that sex is beautiful and makes babies, and babies are beautiful. That's the whole feeling of this. And because of the pain she experiences in sexuality and the worry about what the children would be like, she's in a very complicated, frustrating situation. Now, here's from this website. I give the website address. The actress, referring to Marilyn Monroe, also confessed her biggest fear to Schiller. She wanted a baby. I've always wanted a baby, she said. Having a child, that's always been my biggest fear. I want a child and I fear a child. Whenever it comes close, my body said no, and I lost the baby. Wow. This, just is tragic. When you see that Moon, Venus, Uranus, I always wanted to have a baby, she says. Yeah, she did. And that would have been the right thing for her. But given the physiological problems and her concern about if the baby being abnormal, which would be a natural, intelligent concern when you have that running in your family, very, very difficult. One solution would have been adoption, would have been to find the right person to make her life with and spend her life with, adopt children and create that family and that commitment, something like that. She told the photographer that she was worried that she would end up like her mother, Gladys Baker, who spent her life being in and out of mental institutions. Monroe was brought up in foster care. So the obvious solution, adoption. Her fears are not paranoid. They're based on mental illness in the family. So what happens using this vibrational astrology is we're finding out things we don't know. If we use astrology only to confirm what we already know, what's the point? But we're getting an insight into Marilyn Monroe, into things we had no idea about. So here's that 19th harmonic, all those midpoint structures between Mercury, Venus, Mars, Neptune, and Pluto. And these planets are in 19th harmonic. Very clearly a writer, a playwright, a person who develops good plots and themes, imagination. She could be a brilliant writer. This is one of the strongest patterns in the chart. Is the astrology wrong? Well, let's read about her. Here's another website where I copy stuff. Having never graduated from high school, she was a voracious reader throughout her career, leaving behind a 400-book library with works by Milton, Dostoevsky, Whitman, Hemingway, and Kerouac. Monroe would occasionally write, too, jotting down notes and poems on hotel stationery, scrap paper, and the first few pages of new journals. So, I say here at the bottom, many untrue things are said about celebrities. People exaggerate. It sounds good. She had a 400-book library, Milton, Dostoevsky. A lot of people buy books. She's wealthy, I assume. Did she really read these things? Was she really excited about it? Many untrue things are said about celebrities. Can we believe this? Well, I did some more research, read more stories about it, and based on the astrology, I believe it's absolutely 100% true. She was a voracious reader. She wanted to understand these things. This was her life. This was really strong. How did she end up marrying Arthur Miller? I always thought that was weird. Here's glamour girl, sex symbol, marrying Arthur Miller, the playwright. Looked weird to me. It doesn't look weird at all to me now. It makes 100% perfect sense. That's a big part of herself that she would be able to share. If she didn't have all these other problems, it could work through it. So after analyzing Marilyn Monroe's chart, her life is put into perspective. I feel like I understand her, and I hope you do too. If only she could have been really understood and appreciated for who she was by more people. If only she could have been encouraged to pursue the gifts she was born with, and and was given intelligent and wise counsel on her dilemmas. And so vibrational astrology can really help people. I feel like I understand who Marilyn Monroe is. She's a person. She's not just an image on a screen. She went through various experiences. We see the glamour, we see the high sexuality, but we see a lot more. And as we look into it, we see exactly the things that occurred in her life described in these vibrational patterns. And one last comment. Yeah, this is my last slide. Every normally functioning person can learn to play a musical instrument. Everybody can learn to sing. Everybody can learn to dance. All of us can do arithmetic. And we can even do higher mathematics. We can paint. Every one of us can do this. All of us are blessed with beautiful and sophisticated energetic patterns. Each of us have different gifts and inclinations, and the cosmic vibrational patterns show the lines of force that are available to us and that we can utilize to create a life that brings fulfillment and meaning. So all of us can do those things. But when you look at these vibrational patterns, when you look at those 19th harmonic patterns in the chart of Marilyn Monroe, I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to go back to this diagram and finish up with this one diagram. These purple lines showing how Mars, Venus, Mercury, Pluto, Neptune are all equally spaced in 19th harmonic, showing a writer. It'd be like an outstanding playwright, and she marries a playwright. This looks like a playwright to me. Is it someone who can come up with the concept, the design, the imagination, just fantastic. And people just thought, oh, that's cute. Marilyn's trying to understand these books and read these books. No, it's not just cute. This is the heart and soul of who she is. If it was more appreciated, more supported, to have helped her through her fears, her very understandable fears. I think it was intelligent for her to have concerns about having an abnormal baby given those situations. How she could have solved it, find some way to have built the kind of commitment she wanted. She wasn't able to put it together. It all unraveled in her tragic death. Okay, so that's how we use vibrational astrology to understand what a person is, what the energy flow is, and then we see how it all plays out in the context of their lives, given the situation that they're born into and the decisions that they make. I feel like I really understand who Marilyn Monroe is after studying the chart and who she is as a real person, not just the Venus, Uranus, Neptune, fifth harmonic pattern, which made her a glamorous image on the silver screen. A lot more going on than that. Okay, thank you, my friends, for listening. God bless. Namaste.